Hello, I'm Eric Ballon, and today we're going to talk about Dura-Europa, a crossroads of empires and culture. So, Dura-Europa itself was a city center located in eastern Syria for modern times. It was on the eastern bank of the Euphrates River on a cliff, and it controlled caravan routes and river traffic, frontier position on multiple empires. There's massive amount of Greek influence in this city because if you translate its name roughly, it could mean Greek fortress. So regional, near there's a lot of traffic in this region. Free Silk Road trade paths have been going in and out. Not specifically, maybe not this city itself, but the Euphrates River was a huge corridor of trade between ancient Mesopotamian cities. So the founding of Dura-Europa happened around 300 BCE. I did see in some research that they mentioned that there was a settlement there prior, but I only was able to find that in one source, so I couldn't collaborate. But if that was more than just a theory by an individual. So it was set up as part of a Hellenistic military colony. And it was done by Seclus the First, who was a general of Alexander the Great, and to some degrees a successor after he died. It was created as both a fortress and a settlement. So life in the city is predominantly Greek to some degree under Seclus' rule. It's sentenced as a frontier colony. There's a grid pattern, street layout, which is predominantly Greek, but it is a unique city because there is a large Semitic population. So, decline of Seclus itself. There's a civil war, so the empire starts to weaken. They begin to loosen territory in the east, and they don't. Since this Dura-Europa is somewhat of a frontier colony, it starts to weaken. And this led the Parthians moving in and taking control. So around 113 BCE, Dura falls to the Parthian rule. And there's a lot more integration than a total destruction of the city. This is important for future references about destruction of the city. And you'll see why. So the Parthian Empire, this is a larger thing. And you can see it took over a majority of the Seclus Empire. And now Dura-Europa is on the eastern frontier of the Parthian Empire. So it's now a border hub. There's a lot more Iranian cultural influence as a result of Parthian control. There's still Greek, Syrian, and Babylonian presence in the city. And there's now a more deeper connection to the now established Silk Road through Parthia. They had a greater connection to Eastern trade routes, specifically as we know the Silk Road today. So its connection to the Silk Road connected through Anak, connected East Mesopotamia and Iran. It had access to the Steppe Road northern branches, which we know is the predecessor of the Silk Road. And it really facilitated exchange of goods, peoples, and ideas. I spent a lot of time researching this and understand Dura-Europa was prior to the Silk Road was already a location for cultural exchange. So, goods exchange to this area. You got silk, spices, dyes, glassware, textiles. You got some coins and precious metal, art, religious objects, so on and so forth. So, it's a multicultural population. There's Greeks because of seclude in the Hellenistic colonies. You have Iranians. You're on the right by the Iranian plateau. You got Arabs. You got Jews. You got Persians. You got Syrians. You got steppe nomads even coming in, and you have Romans. Oh, they come later. So religious diversity. There's a lot of diversity in this city. They have temples of Baal, they have Artemis, they have Aphrodite, they have a Jewish synagogue, they have a Christian house church. It is a very diverse location incorporating multiple religions. And this is a number of artifacts that are found. The relief specifically is Aphrodite. The structure that looks crumbling is the Temple of Baal. So, eventually, it's going to switch hands to the Romans. The Romans actually control it on two separate occasions. Once in 113 CE, under when Trajan was the emperor, and then again in 165, led by the emperor at the time, Lucius Verus, which I always reference when I talk about him as the forgotten good emperor. So, the Romans seized the city from the Parthians the second time. It is now established as a garrison and building on top of what is already there, what the Parthians had built, what the Secludans built, the already cultural melting pot that exists. So, garrison life, it's a multi-ethnic army. You had Syrian infantry, Palmyrean archers, you had Greek scribes, you got Roman officers. And this is going to be found through papyri, documents, and graffiti that are found in the city. So, it's continued to be important on the Silk Road, connected Iran and Central Asia, merchants, cultural customs, all this is going on right here. In this map, you can see all Dura-Europa is on the eastern side, and everything is going to Rome. So, Dura-Europa is acting as an intermediate between the east and the west. So, wall paintings, you're going to see a lot of art here. You got synagogue murals, temple art, religious scenes, and you're going to see actually a combination of cultural styles. And this is very unique. So, military architecture, defensive walls, towers, Roman ramparts, siege works, very typical setup. Sanzian threat. So, eventually, about 100 years after the Romans took Dura-Europa the second time, it is laid siege by the Sanzians a few times. The Sanzians had taken part of Parthian territories, and Dura-Europa was that. So in 256, Sanzian army attacks, extensive siege, tunnels. There is evidence that they use chemical warfare. And that is a picture that is one of the things that promotes the evidence of chemical warfare, because of chemical residue found on the dead soldier. So, the thing about this, after the Sanzians came, laid waste to the city, they never rebuilt. The number of reasons, military value diminished, too destroyed. You can't, it's not worth it. The funds and the manpower. And it's now the Roman Empire starting to destabilize. There's a lot of destabilization of other empires in the region. So it was not worth the military power to keep this city going. So eventually it's going to be lost. And it's going to be lost till about 1920. And it was actually just so happened a British military unit was setting up a camp by one of the walls. And they ended up just noticing all the wall paintings. So they investigated a little longer. So then major excavation from the French Academy in Yale University took place. So that's an aerial view and a gridlock of Dura-Europa today. So archaeological treasures, there's a lot of them. Synagogue mural, Christian house church, military documents, armory, graffiti inscription. This location is key. It has the most well-preserved Roman armor. And it's a very unique Roman armor because its incorporation of local materials and designs, which was unique. This is the synagogue that I talked about real quick, and it's just beautiful murals. On the left, you'll see the outline, and there's paintings depicting many scenes from Genesis. Interesting enough, one of them that's depicted in Genesis, the Messiah is actually Orpheus, usually a deity from Greece who represents peace. So there is an integration by Jewish artists of other religions into their own religious paintings. Then you have a house church, which is originally was a house that was converted as a house of worship for Christianity. There's a lot of paintings, a baptismal location, and so this is one of the oldest churches to still exist. Some say it is the oldest still in existence. Dating cannot get an exact time when it was built and converted, because it was converted from just a regular house. So there's documents, there's a plethora of documents, inscriptions, and you can see them in multiple languages, which tries bring up the cultural infusion element. So Dura-Europa to me is more about a melting pot of different cultures intertwining. There's different religions. There's a conflict with Roman Parthian frontier dynamics. The multicultural and items show a trade going through an adoption. So in the timeline, you can peruse. I am going to shut it off in about 30 seconds. So